So that's
There
cool.
we
Okay,
are.
thank you so much, Rebecca. And look, I have to say thanks a million to Rebecca and Louisa, because they have been absolutely phenomenal in coming together and collaborating on this. I couldn't have done it without them. And the FYMMO team have been central. And also, it's so difficult to have someone else's presentation and have to flip through. So this is going to be really kind of, this is going to be cool, and we'll just see how this goes. But so thanks so much for that. And I suppose if you've had me before, and if you've seen anything that I've presented before, you'll know that I always start with this slide. And if you're hearing this again, I'm sorry, right? If you're at the session on the CVs, I'm sorry, but I do need to say to those people who haven't been here, I don't care what it is that you've done around your career up until today. Today is a new day. Okay, so I don't care what it is that you regret, what it is you didn't do, the mistakes that you made. Today is a new day. I don't care that you don't know or you're so confused. Today is a new day. So, and that's why this graphic is so important to me, that idea of the sun rising again, because tomorrow is a new day. You get to actually put work into this now and engage with this now, regardless of what you've done before. We will build it, and I'm here to support you to build together, whether it's coming into your classes, whether it's you and me one-on-one, we will build this. But you just have to be a little bit proactive about it and actually put yourself out there, get involved. And you're already getting involved because you're here. So I'm not saying that. Be our champions, get out there and get everybody else around you to get involved as well. Okay, Rebecca, I'm going to bring you to the next slide. So this is me, right? And this is where we should be, or if you're graduating, this is probably what you remember, that we were. We're not there now, okay? But the sunny days are on their way back. That's all we can say. And hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later. Has it been a ball to be here? Absolutely. But you know what? We have an absolutely amazing end to it. This is such a positive, good news story that these companies are so interested in us and what they do, and that they're still continuing their business. Okay, so in terms of interviewing then, the good news is, because interviews are hard, we get worried about them. We get worried about putting ourselves in front of companies, about talking about, what it is that we do, or really just talking about ourselves. It can be a very anxiety-ridden thing for us, okay? And so what I want to say to you is, actually, you know what? There's good news. What I want to say to you also is, never go to an interview, apart from this one, which is 10 minutes, not really an interview, okay? So never go to an interview without coming to me for a mock interview first, okay? Because that's a game changer. You can change your interview game if you come to me and have a mock interview before you ever go to the door of that interview, okay? So the good news about interviews is this. It's a strategy, and we can all learn strategy. Every single one of us. You're doing a degree in college, or you've done a degree in college. You're a graduate, you're doing a postgraduate. Strategy, we do strategy, okay? It's about thinking about what we're it's about planning it out. It's about managing. In fact, 95% of your interview happens before you ever walk through that door, okay? Really, the interview itself, that's just the 5%. That's the final 5%. The work that you do beforehand is the interview, okay? And that's the strategy, okay? So let's talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to ask Rebecca to go to the next slide. Okay, so there are a few basics here. You will have 10 minutes in this interview. If I was walking you through, a real interview, we'd walk through kind of definitely 10 questions together to start to get you to prep those kinds of answers for yourself. And there's a very key model that I use for that. But these are the interview basics. And, in a 10-minute interview, really, you're not going to have a huge amount of time, right? 10 minutes goes by like that. Well, you know that. So have an answer to the tell me about yourself question. This is your elevator pitch. What is it that you want the company to know about you straight away? Okay, and and I'd say to you, rather than say, look, they have your CV, right? Because your CV has probably gone through with your profile. So they have that. So you could waste this question and say, well, I did this, and I go to IADT, because tell me about yourself. It's such a general question, right? I was born in Holles Street, 1975. In fact, the sun was shining as my parents were driving in. So I was meant to be Michelle, actually, but my mum called me Dawn Michelle. There you go. That's my story, right? Tell me about yourself. That's what they asked. You get to bring it down to specifics, okay? And actually, this question needs to be rolling out of your tongue. You need to be saying this to yourself in the mirror. And I would start the answer to this question not by going through your CV. They have your CV, right? There are probably two things that you should know about me. One, I'm absolutely UX mad. So, or, not that obviously, but I'm really, really interested in UX. So, I'm just studying psychology, but UX, and and I use an example. Okay. And I'm going to talk to you about how you use that example in a minute. And the second thing that you should know, and why we structure answers in that way, is because you see, when I give someone a map, there's probably two things that you should know about me. And I go, firstly, then they're in their heads, they're going, okay, this is the first thing. And now I know there's one other thing left after this. So there's a map I'm giving to them all the time. And I'm leading the interview. I get to lead the interview. The great news is 85% of viewers have never been trained to interview. What does that mean? It means they ask stupid questions, number one, really general ones like, tell me about yourself. But we get to lead that interview and bring it right down into specifics, okay? Because they've never been trained to interview. They're just asking the questions that they were asked in their interviews. That's great knowledge for us. You want to practice the strengths and weakness question, okay? Because, that's a great one to have. What's your strengths? And you won't be asked a weakness question in this 10 minutes, but if you are asked a weakness question, think of something that's very close to your heart, something that's very true. I get dragged into detail, whatever it is. Listen, everybody says I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Lose that one, okay? That's not, you want to not leave the weakness in the room. So it might be, I find it hard to confront people. And, when I run a group project, I use the example when I was on a group project, someone wasn't pulling their weight, and it was really difficult for me to go and actually say that to them. But what I've learned, and you end with what you've learned and what you've put in place to make that better. So you never leave a weakness in the room. All right. So you just think about, well, what is it that I find hard personally? And really, because the closer you stay to the truth, the more powerful your answer is. But you never leave a weakness in the room, okay? You reformulate it. And you always want to inquire about next steps, okay? So what's coming next? And I'm giving you at the end of this presentation, again, which you'll be able to look up, and we'll have that for you up so that you can just download it and you won't have to listen to everything again. Okay, so we use the STARV model in interviews. So do you remember I said, you describe the situation, the task, the action you took. So in that example where I was talking to you about the tell me about yourself question, and I said, I'm so interested in UX. So for example, by the way, they're my two best friends in an interview. Those two words, for example, they're your two best friends, because every time you start to answer an interview question, you're looking for your opportunity to put for example in. So whatever Rebecca asks me there, I'm looking for my opportunity to put in for example. And once I put those for example words in, it brings me straight to the STARV model: situation, task, action, result, and value. So what was the situation? What was this task? Explain the action you took. And generally, it's a couple of actions. So I did this, and I did this, and what was the result? And well, look, it got better. We brought footfall up by 20%. Don't just leave it at that. What was the value? What did I learn? What was good for the company? What did the customer get out of it? That's the value. So don't just stop on the results. People just stop. Yeah, so look, it was 20% better at the end. Boom. And we all fall off a cliff into the end of the answer. Value is the boom that you want to leave in the room, and that's what you're trying to get to. Okay, so that's what we learned along the way. That's what I learned personally, what it brought for the company, what it brought for the customer, what this did, this result. That's the value. So make sure that you're hitting each of the bases on this model, and you get to practice this. Okay, and I'm going to go to the next slide, please, Rebecca.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I jumped one.
Yeah. So in terms of your STARV stories, then where do they come from? I'm in first year. I don't have a huge amount of work experience. Well, I had a part-time job here, and where do they come from? Well, it comes from your work experience. So if you have that part-time job, and again, regardless, look at the LinkedIn session. Your part-time job is really important, even though it's not in IT or even though it's not in design. Okay, it's important because it tells me so many different things about you. You're balancing work and college life. You're getting your deadlines. You're also hitting your targets in work. It tells me so much about you. So that question gets asked to me all the time. Do I put these on? Yes, you absolutely do, and you can use a STARV model from there as well. Your group projects, internships, volunteering, travel, sports. When I was class rep, if that's something or personal projects, and so much more. Okay, whatever your interests are, a STARV story can come from that. And I'm going to ask you to fly on again there, Rebecca. Again, you'll have all of these presentations, so you can come back on this and have a look at what it is that I realize I'm flying through at the moment. So again, I want to make my answer concise. That's the thing about a starved story. That's what it does for you, because it stops you rambling. Rambling, you see, in an interview, if you are lost, right? Oh, what was the question again? And I'm just still talking. I'm still talking. I can't even remember what the question was. I'm still talking. I'm still talking. If I'm just going to ask you to go back to that again. Sorry, Rebecca. If you are lost, the interviewer is also lost. The starved story allows you, keep it concise, know exactly where you are. I actually use my fingers when I'm giving, in an interview. What was the situation, the task, the action, the result, the value? I have my hands on my knee and I'm like, where am I? And see if I realize, oh my God, I'm rambling. Where was I? And my middle finger is down. I know I was on actions. So I go straight back to actions again. Okay, so look, there are lots of little things that you can do in order to just stay on the starved story so that it's concise, because you're given, and you're not saying, well, the situation was, the task was, the action was. That's in your head. What's coming out is just the story. And you have the structure in your head, but they're just getting a potted paragraph. There is an absolute sea of difference between a starved interview and another interview. I can't even, they're different lands entirely. I can't even describe. And I have sat at this side of the interview desk at too many occasions not to try and get that across to you. Huge difference. It's a game changer. Feels clunky at the start to do, feels really clunky. As you get used to it, you won't do business any other way. Okay, so we'll move on to the next slide now. So you get to illustrate your competencies, right? So this is what I said before, just to recap. Make the words, for example, your best friend. Use these words at every available opportunity and portray honesty. Really, what is my weakness? Let's portray honesty. But actually showing the palms of your hands, look, I'm a psychologist, I can't help it. That actually, if you, that portrays honesty. Because if you think about it, I've had a 4-year-old, she's now 13, but I didn't do it. I don't know what you're talking about. Palms of the hands, right? And you know that she doesn't do it. When she comes in and she goes, you can't show your mouth, So, keep your hands away from your mouth in an interview is a really good tip, because that actually, it brings us to a different place in terms of what it is that we remember. And the value is the punchline. This is where you'll win. But that doesn't mean that if I did it again, I wouldn't have done it this way. That shows learning. So look, what I learned was that, if I was to do this process again, I do this, this, and this, because actually, boom, boom, boom. And oh my God, as an interviewer, I'm like, this person learns as they go, and they put in those kinds of things, okay? We got the result, but we could have got it better, easier if. When the same happened recently, we were a lot more prepared. It just demonstrates honesty and integrity and shows you wanting and willing to learn and willing to bring it forward. Okay, so we're going to go to the next slide now. Thanks, Rebecca. So here's an example, okay? And I don't love this example, by the way, because they didn't get to the value, but I'm going to show you the next one, which does have value in it. But I just want to give you a couple of examples, okay, so that you can kind of go away and see what we're talking about here. So I'm tasked with streamlining and improving efficiencies of the lab within 1 month. There's the situation and task together. I'm not asking you to go, okay, and then what was the task? Then you can put them together. And to do this, these are the actions. I completed an audit of the equipment logbooks. I identified desired improvements. I implemented new practices, and all within a specified time frame. Brilliant actions, okay? And what did we do? We got a 30% improvement. Boom. So what does that mean, right? I just fell off a cliff there, because great, you got a 30% improvement. I've nothing to kind of contextualize that or tell me what that meant for anybody, okay? So the value is missing, all right? So if we go on to the next one, I wanted to give you, an effective communicator. On behalf of ABC Bank, I successfully developed a presentation on online banking for pre-retirees. Now, what I would say to you, see the way they put the task and action together? Don't love that either, right? So what did you do? I put a PowerPoint together. I researched information in terms of I looked at what the bank was doing. These are the actions. So I want you to be a bit better on the actions piece, okay? And then, so what was the result? 90% of attendees that came to those sessions registered for online banking. These are retirees, and 90% of people who came to my session registered. So wow, that's, that's a brilliant result. And then the value of that. Okay, well, this ensured greater efficiencies for the branch, and you can talk a little bit more about that. And that's the value, right? Or I learned that, actually, even with people that you kind of have made made a decision about in your head, retirees, they're never going to go online. Well, actually, guess what? 90% of them did. Okay, so you get to be human with the people that you're interviewing with, but the STARV model is absolutely central. So I just wanted you to just take that on board. Okay, so Rebecca, we're going to the next slide, please. So then we're looking at, it's always good to have a couple of questions in your back pocket for the end of the interview. What would you want this person to achieve in the first 3 months for you, for it to be the right person? Great question, because it's placing you in the role. And I would even say, look, what would I need to achieve in the first 3 months in the role? So again, you're really even pushing that further. You take every opportunity to place yourself in the role. It's the same reason you use the STARV model. It's the same reason you use, for example, because you're placing yourself in the role. Okay, what are the biggest tasks someone would need to get a grip with in the first month? Good question, because I need to know, like, how do I hit the ground? Or what are the biggest tasks I would need to get to grip with? Again, I'm always placing myself in the role. What's a typical week look? What would a typical week look like for me? What's the structure? Who would I be reporting to? When am I likely to hear what the next steps are? What are the types of projects and responsibilities? What are your challenges at the moment? What's your biggest challenge here? That's a really good question. But how can I help you solve it? What's the profile of the staff? And then, maybe there's some things raised in the interview that you kind of want to ask them a bit further about. I wouldn't ask them really substantial questions about things they'd already talked about, just if you want to kind of just figure out that, what's something a little bit that you kind of look at, a little bit. Okay, so we'll move on to the piece. Okay. So what's the benefit?
Sorry, we only have 10 minutes left. I'm really sorry to say.
And I think we talked about the benefit of STARV. So we'll go on to the next. Slide, because I think we're just there. So these are this is the final slide. These are the top interview tips. Seek to serve, not to get. Again, what's the problem that you currently face that I can help you solve? Bring an idea to the interview. Please research these companies. I'm not asking you to come in with an idea, but at least know with what they do. And say, and say, look, and map that to what it is, something that you've done and why you're interested in them. Send an old school thank you note. Absolutely, definitely do that. Not only be prepared, look prepared, and we have tips in the section in terms of just clearing the clutter behind you and all of that kind of thing, because this is online. And make sure that, I know you're using this app on the phone. You're using this app on the phone all the time, and you're building your profile on the phone and all that kind of thing. But on the day, be on your desktop. Be on your desktop, because you're in a video room much like this. You don't want to be on a phone doing this and getting the picture. You want to be in the video room. You're going in, you're knocking. It's an amazing system, by the way. It's an amazing system, and you are going to love it. And it really is easy to use, but you want to be sitting in in a way that you can actually just relax and chat. Okay, build rapport with the interviewer, and people hire who they like, so greet warmly, use eye contact. And eye contact in a video room is, you've got to make sure you look at the camera. Like right now, I'm looking at the camera and I'm looking directly at you. So you've got to make sure that you're doing that sometimes. And I realize now that I've been looking all over here and here and here while I've been thinking, but if you're looking directly at the camera, that's eye contact, all right? So just make sure that that's fine to look around everywhere as you're thinking, but make sure that one of the places that you look at is the camera as you're talking, okay? And it's great because you actually don't have to look in people's eyes, right, anymore. When you try to do eye contact in the real world, that could be off-putting, but now you've got a camera to look at. Brilliant. Okay, look interested, speak clearly, all of that kind of lovely stuff. And show your enthusiasm and your passion. Okay, so that's it for me in terms of interviews. I think that we've probably given you enough in terms of that. Again, we'll have the presentation up there so that you can just download it and have a kind of look through it and refresh yourself, especially around the STARV model. Seeing that in action is a really good thing to have. Q&A.